It's extremely challenging for young people trying to find work this summer. Youth workers accounted for more than 50% of all job losses in this country in the first few months of this year. And research shows nearly 1 million Canadian youth are currently not enrolled in education, training, or doing a job of any kind. CERIC is a national nonprofit organization that provides education, research, and counseling in career development for people of all ages. They say the youth unemployment crisis isn't just a labor market story. It could mean big trouble down the road for the workforce in Canada, and we should all contribute to fixing the problem. Keka DasGupta is the board chair of CERIC and a founder of the Art of Lifing. We spoke with her this week. Hi, Keka. Welcome to All in a Weekend.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
There are reports that nearly 1 million Canadian youth are currently not, pursuing an education or working or in training. What's going on?
Yeah, this is highlighting for all of us that this is a systemic issue. This is not about youth carrying the weight of not being able to find education or work or training on their own shoulders. And I think sometimes culturally we tend to think that this is either an issue for young people to deal with or employers need to just hire more people. But really what this statistic highlights for us is we need to take a holistic approach. And we are all in this together as a society. And, when it comes to government support or looking at the culture within our employers, how we have to look at career development and embracing the value that young people bring into the workforce entirely differently today than we did in previous years and previous generations too.
What are some of the barriers they're facing, though, while young people are trying to find employment?
I think in all that's changing in the world today, we see so much transformation with technology and AI and all kinds of things. Our systems still are a little bit outdated in the way that we think. Within the whole workforce, we're trying to fit that square peg into the round hole, but the round hole shape is constantly changing. Yeah. Our pegs are changing. And so what we really need to do is see career development support as a responsibility that falls on all of us. And we have to also help young people see the value that they bring to the world, a fresh set of eyes, a new way to see things. Young people have learned to pivot from the time they were children. They have a different sense of adaptability than many of us think they do. And we often look at their potential the way that we would have looked at what we were capable of at 17. But that's actually not the case. The other barrier that I think we have is there is common general pressure that's put on young people, and they're facing it today that they have to make a career decision by the time they leave high school and go to the next
before
step.
They leave high school.
Yeah, and that's actually not the way our systems work anymore. Our research at CERIC found that 31% of high school students felt that they had to pick a career before graduating, and 33% of high school students feel like AI will eventually replace their future job. Wow. And imagine how bleak that feels from the perspective of a young set of eyes. And what would that do to our society if that was actually the reality? It's not, and we need to be able to communicate and change the culture and to change the way that we work that way.
Well, CERIC has actually conducted a study on this, and according to the research, how are young people feeling about their future?
They are feeling really nervous and scared that if they make the wrong move, they're going to completely derail their future. That's the key thing that we found. We put together a myth-busting quiz and survey. I was part of the focus groups when we talked to young people, and they felt like, I'm going to go into debt if I go into education, and if I take the wrong program or wrong piece, then all of my money or my parents' money will be gone and our debt will be there. And it's sort of like a ever evolving, oh my God, what's going to happen sort of scenario. So we put together a myth-busting career, and this is good for both young people and adults. It's careermythbuster.ca if anybody wants to check it out, but it actually helps people, especially young people, see the questions they're asking and then look at the statistics and the data and what's actually happening so that they can start to recognize where some of the myths we have in our society, the facts that we see don't actually prove that. In the same way that, your one job today doesn't make or break your life, the average worker will have 13 jobs in their lifetime. And if you ask most adults, none of our successes came in a straight line. Yeah. I worked as a daycare worker when I was first starting off. off. Then I worked at a vacation sales representatives company. I worked in retail, in advertising. Now I'm a keynote speaker. All of us have those stories, right? How we pivot. We need to share that with young people and help them see that that is actually the norm. And so the idea of igniting curiosity in young people is really important. Try new things, build new experiences. That's all part of the path you're accumulating.
But it's also encouraging other career paths. I mean, other than traditional, if you grow up in a family where, and this is across many cultures, where there were only certain careers that you were supposed to go for because that was, either making the most money or the most stable. Well, there are other careers that can be stable that are also very good. And we're seeing shortages in those industries because we weren't encouraging kids to do it. And now we're suffering the consequences because we've spent generations not encouraging people to do those things.
Exactly. Yeah. We're operating off of certain biases that were formed based on the realities we had when we were young. Those actually don't apply to young people today. And so I would encourage anybody who has young people in their lives, whether it's parents or family or, community members, teachers, let's look at the statistics, the evidence. Let's help young people explore their careers. The language that we use at CERIC is around career development is career exploration. It's so important to think about the fact that we evolve in our work. And exactly as you said, the opportunities are in all kinds of different areas, often unconventional. If we said, for example, when we were young, I want to be a YouTuber, what would that reality look like? Well, we've got AI and all kinds of things changing. So the future of our generations now that are coming into the workforce, their futures can look dramatically different from ours. So it is about really building that curiosity and helping people find the things that they're really good at, they're strong at, looking at the market opportunities, and knowing that a decision you make today doesn't define everything you do in the future. It adds more richness and wealth to what you can offer in that next chapter as well. That's the sort of thing that we need to talk about. And, we don't really always think about career counselors and career advisors as a must-have in our lives. And this is something that CERIC is working really hard to change. We have coaches in sports. We have teachers who teach us at schools. We've got doctors and therapists. Career counseling needs to be something that as government, as employers, we all need to look at and say, how do we support our people and give them that kind of support? Young people need it, especially, but I think even as adults, we all need it. That needs to be something that we all look at. And in fact, there are a lot of career development professionals that are dedicated to helping people find and navigate these chapters. Often people don't know where to look. So CERIC actually put together a directory of directories. If you go to ceric.ca/career help, across Canada, in all of the different regions, we can find that career help. So I think it's about saying, I want to have a career counselor who can show me and help me navigate this. You don't have to do it alone.
Well, we've been talking a lot about what young people can do for themselves and the adults in their lives. But, you mentioned a couple of factors that are out of their control. Companies not investing in training in younger people, taking, other kinds of labor instead of using labor that, is available to them now. What should businesses be doing to make sure that they have a line of succession for their workforce that is stable?
The key thing that I think we see with businesses as well, many businesses are trying to fill roles. They're in an immediate, urgent need. If you ask a lot of business owners, they're going to say, I can't fill positions. I'm having trouble finding the right kinds of people. But I think that training and adapting, pivoting, these are critical traits that we're looking for within our workforce right now. We often tend to overlook young people as having that potential. And I think that's the thing that employers need to look at is how much are their profits bleeding, their productivity bleeding? Where are the relationships that the actual business and organizational outcomes that matter are affected when we are not integrating young people into our workforce? We feel this lack on one side because there's empty roles or roles that aren't being filled. And then young people who have a fresh set of eyes who can come in and potentially offer incredible value. We don't necessarily see that because we're still thinking of young people the way that we would have many generations ago. So I think it's a mindset shift for businesses to look at things differently and having conversations like you and I are having. This is the kind of thing that needs to be top of mind in our conversations to say this is a shared responsibility among all of us. if I can share an example, when I worked, fresh out of university, I got a job at IKEA. And as a company, they would always say, we see things one way and we're used to seeing it. When you come in as a young person into our company, you have a fresh set of eyes. Show us and tell us what we're not seeing. And time after time, there would be cases where a part-time coworker who's, just finishing up their training work in a particular area is working in retail, and they would see certain products being shipped a certain way. And they would say, if you just turn one upside down beside the other, it takes half the shipping space. That insight then could be taken to a global level, and imagine how much money the company saves.
Yeah.
Getting that, so we need to think about what we're missing and then recognize that young people are often the answers to that. So it's a culture shift and a structure shift we need.
Well, and you found your way out of that IKEA. Good for you.
I did.
Physically and mentally in your career. Keka, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Keka DasGupta, the board chair of CERIC.